no lessons learned, no documentation, nothing. Al baraka. Yani yalla. So it's very sad, والله. It's very sad that and you said lessons learned, and what else did you say? You said something else at the end. Muhammad.
I said maybe about the code and enforcement of the code.
Yeah, I know. Lessons learned, and there's something else. But anyway, lessons learned, accountability, all these are things that unfortunately we don't do. And that's related also to our understanding of our deen. It always go back there, yeah. As long as we're still explaining things in a metaphysical way, meaning that this is a punishment, this is that, this is, you're not going to learn lessons. I mean, it's not going to happen. So, and I mentioned this in this Jumu'ah. I said what we need is the balanced approach. When something goes wrong in your life, as a person or as a nation, the first thing is to meet it with patience and perseverance, regardless, before you even try to understand it. That's the first thing. الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إن لله وإنا إليه راجعون أولئك عليهم صلوات بشر الصابرين in the beginning. الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إن لله وإنا إليه راجعون أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون. يعني that's very important, especially in the first moment, whether it is losing beloved ones, whether it is whatever. But then there is another, I mean, this is very important component, which should bring you back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, repenting, seeking forgiveness. Maybe this is a punishment, you never know. Before you try to understand it, just patience, seeking forgiveness, tawbah, repentance, dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it easy on you. All of this is one front. On the other hand, you have to understand why, what happened and why, and what is your responsibility. I mean, take charge, take responsibility. What is within your means and what is beyond your means. It's very important to draw the line between what's within your control and what is outside your control. Now, within your control, that you have to take care of it. Only the other part, you leave it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's beyond you. There is nothing you can do about it. So it's and that's the Islamic approach. قُلُوا مِنْ عِنْدِ أَنفُسِكُمْ وَمَا أَصَابَكَ مِنْ سَيِّئَةٍ فَمِنْ نَفْسِكَ فَمِمَا كَسَبَتْ أَيْدِيكُمْ. It's all directing us to take responsibility and take charge of things that goes wrong. Now, for the earthquakes in particular, it's probably the least, the phenomena that we don't have control over it. Unfortunately, science has progressed. I discussed this in Jumu'ah. Science, the purpose of science is to understand phenomena, to have control over it, to upgrade the quality of life. And science was able to bring a lot of things under control. A lot of diseases have disappeared. A lot of things are under control. But science in other areas cannot control. But at least it can predict, and that's great. Now there is nothing you can do about tornadoes and hurricanes, but you can predict them. And being able to predict them can save lives. You can evacuate people, evacuate a whole city if you want, just before it hits. So prediction. Unfortunately, earthquake, even prediction is not there. So you cannot even predict it. But as Brother Muhammad mentioned, there was people through science and technology were able to build and construct buildings that are more robust. And this is something that people, they have to be held accountable. There should be no government that goes without impunity. If there are buildings that were established during this government or that government, this regime or that regime, and they were not robust in area that is active in terms of earthquake or volcano, they have to be held accountable. putting it all on Allah, and this is tila, and this is, that's not going to lead us anywhere. The two components have to go hand in hand. Unfortunately, in most cases, we go only to one extreme. We all go all the religious and forget about our responsibility and the science and trying to understand, or the people, the atheists, etc., forget about the religious component. Islam has a great approach. It's a balanced approach. Meet disasters and mishappening with patience and perseverance and bring you closer to Allah, so you come out stronger, better person, and closer to Allah. At the same time, learn your lessons. Try to understand where did you fail. And again, this applies to individuals, applies to families, applies to communities. Let's stop denial and stop blaming one another and trying to find excuse or find a scapegoat. Let's take charge, take responsibility. Things happen for a reason. Where did you fail? And where is it that you were supposed to do? What is it that you were supposed to do that you did not do it? And sometimes you did it, but you did not do it on time. Because timing also is important. So that self-assessment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises in nafs al-lawam. La uqsimu bin nafs al-lawam. Holding yourself accountable and being harsh on yourself. And that's exercise that we don't do, even though it's a very fundamentally Islamic. It's a fundamentally Islamic approach. قُلْ هُوَ مِنْ عِنْدِ أَنفُسِكُمْ. Don't look around. Don't try to find somebody to blame it on it. Don't deny it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called the defeat in Uhud. He called it fashal, failure. He called it disaster. So there was no sugarcoating. And he called the community, the prophetic community told them, some of you are after this life. منكم من يريد الدنيا ومنكم من يريد الآخرة حتى إذا فشلتم وعصيتم وتنازعتم في الأمر حتى إذا فشلتم وتنازعتم في الأمر وعصيتم من بعد ما أراكم ما تحبون منكم من يريد الدنيا ومنكم من يريد الآخرة. Very harsh language. Now when you say this about anything that happens, sometimes this is at least a natural disaster, at least. But sometimes even corruption, things that are the result of corruption, etc. And people say, Allah ghalib, yani, Allah, well, there is nothing we can do. Yani, yes, you are suffering because there is a regime that is corrupt. I mean, I tell people a lot of time in many Muslim countries, any small amount of rain causes flood. And so people, they just cope with it. They get used to it. I say, this is not normal. And you are in this situation because there was a corruption. Because whoever the contractor who did this, they cheated. So you should not accept it. It's not a natural disaster. It is something, it's a suffering that is a result, it's a man-made, it's an artificial. But unfortunately, the Muslim mind, because of those Islamic misconception, putting ibtila, testing or trial in the wrong place, leaving things to Allah, even though they are your responsibility. Because of all these misconceptions, majority of Muslims nowadays, they are more into adaptation rather than change. التأقلم, trying to adapt. Situation gets worse, and you try to adapt. Prices go very high, skyrocketing, and you deprive yourself from things, and you're just trying to adapt. And you don't think about change, even though our religion is essentially about change. And in Islam, Risal al-Taghyir, make no mistake about it. It is a message and a mission of change, changing individuals and changing societies. But unfortunately, when we abandoned that mission, we became people who are expert in adapting. And we take pride in this, that we withstand very difficult situation. We're still adapting. You don't have to adapt. I mean, you are entitled to much better life, dignified life, if there are more justice and if there are more freedom and more transparency and accountability. So it is very sad that we are still puzzled and confused with events. We don't make the effort to understand them and draw that critical line between what is in our responsibility and what is beyond. What is in our responsibility, we have to understand it and fix it. Now I remember the other thing that you mentioned, Brother Muhammad, fix it. And what is beyond our responsibility makes us pray to Allah closer, seek forgiveness, repentance, and seek His help and guidance. That's a very delicate, balanced approach that we have to adapt. Second thing that you mentioned is fixing things from the roots. Unfortunately, we don't do that. But yeah, and they are related. If you don't diagnose the problem, you will never fix from the roots. So we became addicted to patchwork and the painkiller, musakkinat. So why? Because we don't make the effort to understand the root cause of the problem and fix it from the roots. There is hardly any problem that gets fixed among Muslims. It's all patched. And patched when they cannot deny it. I mean, in the beginning, we deny there is no problem. There is a problem. No, there is no problem. And then we justify it. No, this problem is happening because of conspiracy and because of this and because Allah and all kinds of excuses. And when we run out of excuses and scapegoats and etc., we patch it. We patch it means we slip it under the rug. That's what they do. I mean, that's patching. Somebody has a serious illness and they're just taking painkillers. Then the pain goes away, but the problem doesn't. It's very unfortunate that very fundamental Islamic approaches and principles, it's not unfortunate actually, that's are adopted by non-Muslims and they're reaping the fruits. I mean, other societies are more just. Other societies have more transparency, more accountability. Other society, they take charge and they learn lessons. That's why they don't repeat mistakes. Things are documented. All of these are pure Islamic approach. Starts from where? Starts from taking responsibility for what happens to you.
It's very sad when we look at Rasulullah in his seerah, even in Badr or in Hijrah and migration when they moved from Mecca to Medina, he looked at everything. Where should I house? We should plan the travel. What way should we take? How are we going to eliminate the trace of the camel? He thought of every single thing. This mentality of this way of thinking disappeared. It's not there anymore in our way of thinking. Now, whenever anything happens, we say, oh, this is qadar Allah wa ma sha'a fa'al. We blame Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for everything. That's not exactly, I mean, it has roots in the Turath, in the heritage, but that heritage actually deviated from the correct understanding of Islam. Now, when we discuss the rise and fall of Islamic civilization, Dr. Bashir Ahmed mentioned some of that. I mean, some school of thought that, I mean, that just overwhelmed Muslim Ummah in that history, but it has the effect. And now most of the speakers, Khutub Jum'ah or something, they talk about the same idea. Whenever things like happen, oh, it's punishment. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will. So what you doing? Why you just follow Rasulullah? They kept saying, Sunnah, Sunnah, Sunnah. You are not following the Sunnah. The Sunnah is not only the beard or the dress or the tamer food or dates. No, that's not the Sunnah. That's personal thing, and that was at that time. The food was that way. They didn't have fridges. They didn't have factories to. But they have. Rasulullah left us with a great lesson to learn from. The Battle of Badr, others. If you look at the seerah, it's full of doing things, small things, and taking care of every single details.
It's amazing, Allah. The migration of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, it's a textbook example of diligent planning, meticulous. As Brother Muhammad mentioned, nothing was left to, and that's an extreme example, because if the Prophet ﷺ and his close companions, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, they need that level of detailed planning, then nobody else after that should come and say, leave it to Allah, He will take care of it. Nobody. Because if there is someone who can do that, the Prophet will do it. He's protected from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he didn't, because he is a teacher. He's teaching us that there is no such thing. Anything that you can do, you should do it. And they always mention the two examples from the Quran. First of all, this example from Sirah, it's a textbook example of detailed planning. And subhanAllah, then switching to complete tawakkul when there was nothing more to do. When they were in the cave and the people of Quraysh were around the cave, and Abu Bakr as-Siddiq said that that's it, if they look down, they're going to see us. Then Rasul switched from relying completely on his plan to relying completely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? At the moment where there is nothing more you can do, not before. When there is nothing more you can do, you are inside the cave and these people are outside around the cave, there's nothing you can do. Then you switch completely to tawakkul. It's a great example of that delicate balance between planning as if you're relying on your plan, and then relying on tawakkul as if on Allah, as if you had no plans. And then I mentioned the two examples from the Quran. The example of Musa alayhi salam, and why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked Musa to throw his stick. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have splitted the sea without Musa throwing his stick. It's probably part of the wisdom is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, as long there is something you can do, no matter how small it is, do it, so that the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come, because then you exhausted all the means. And then Maryam alayhi salam, a woman who's delivering or delivered. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could get her the dates without any effort. وَهُزِّي إِلَيْكِ بِجْذِعِ النَّخْلَةِ تُسَاقِطْ عَلَيْكِ رُطَبًا جَنِيًّا. The Quran is lesson for us. It's telling us that even in those circumstances, there is still one small act she can do. She have to do it. And then, even though it's not enough, but that's all what she can do. That's all what she can do. Probably she did not have the effort or the energy to shake but that's all. And Musa, the stick will not do much. But that's the only thing he has. And that's the only thing he can do. Just throw it. So, I don't know. What do we need? What do we need to learn? If we have the example of the Prophet and his migration, everything was planned. By the way, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's not only migration. Even after he migrated to Medina, people have to read the seerah from very different angle. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam did so much intelligence, effort in the beginning of Medina, because this is a small community and many tribes, it was jungle. Many tribes were tempted to attack it. So the Prophet was sending expeditions left and right, because there was no radars at that time. There is only the human intelligence, sending left and right, one, to get the news, and two, to deter people from attacking. And there is a lot of economic work was done in Medina to establish an economy that is independent of the established economy at that time, the Jews. So much work was done to build that community. And what we have in mind is very superficial. It's just the brotherhood between Muhajirin and Ansar, and everything worked fine. No, that's not true. There was a lot of strategies and planning and vision that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his seerah should be studied as a great success story of movement of change. And yes, it was done through human effort. There was no miracles. Even if there is any miracle, even if there is any help from Allah, that help is available to you like it was available to them. That help comes when you exhaust all the means and you are sincere. If your intention is pure, fi sabilillah, and you do everything you can, then the same help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not exclusive for prophets. Is available for believers all the time, but it has those two conditions. Gonna have to be sincere, pure intention, and two, you have to exhaust all the means. And before that, there is nothing. Before that, you are on your own. So it's amazing how lessons from the Quran, lessons from the Seerah, Islamic approach direct us. And I will lie, a lot of time I say, in our behavior, forget about belief and worship, but in our thinking and behavior, a lot of time we're closer to the opposite of the teaching of the Quran than to the teaching. We're almost that Quran teaches us to do things and we are almost doing the opposite. Quran teaches us to take charge and responsibility for what happens. No, we do everything else other than this. Only this thing that we don't do. We do denial, we do excuse, we do blame game, we do scapegoating, we do everything, but we don't do that. Quran teaches us to learn lessons from the people before, not even from our own. لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ عِبْرَةٌ. We don't do that. We don't learn even from our own mistakes. Learning lessons, taking responsibility, doing everything you can, so many things that are being, and we do exactly the opposite. Rather than taking responsibility, we have all those futile approaches. Rather than doing everything we can, we use the tawakkul or the tawakkul in the wrong place. Leave it for Allah. Allah will take care of it, etc. It's a lot of time. We are much closer to the opposite of the teaching of the Quran. I'm talking mainly about the thinking and the behavior, not about the beliefs. And unfortunately, wallah, you can add also hatta akhlaq. You can add even the character and manners. I don't think you and I know. I don't think that Muslim societies nowadays are a good example of honesty, are a good example of work ethics. Are not. They are not.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I just want to add something. I was talking to I was invited to a dinner with my friends yesterday, and there it was a group of people who are doctors, who are people who work in law firms and other brothers, and we talked about something very interesting, and it's really related to the topic today. One of them, he said that the reason that we are, as Muslims, we are not doing that well in this earth, in this life, is because we are not equipped enough with what the skills and tools that we need first, and then even if we are equipped, we don't do our like our role. We don't take responsibility of our role to build our strength. وَأَعِدُّوا لَهُمْ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ مِنْ قُوَّةٍ. So and then we were talking about in general, and we said that we can't as individual to be equipped with everything. Like if I am a person who knows about, let's say, helping people finding jobs or thrive in their career. It's difficult for me to know about this area and go and learn about another area, and then learn about how to collect donations, and then learn how to help people with their and let's say kids, and then and go and teach Quran. I'll be scattered, and my skills, my unique skills will not be used the way that like Ummah wants me to use. So we kind of agreed that every one of us, we know our skills. Like if someone asks us, if you want to be a champion in the world, what is the skill that you would be like to use it in order to be a champion in that area? So if I am good at, let's say, helping, let's say, people with their career, so I need to focus on that area. I need to do my best in order to kind of set a thagara, that gap in the Muslim community. And if someone is good in khatib, to become khatib in addition of his job, let him or her let him go ahead and improve their skills, practice, and go and fill that gap. So what do you think, Dr. Anush?
I mean, it's you said it already. It's no, we don't respect expertise and specialization, and we have this tendency to be the everything for everybody. We are this team idea, that the fact that there is nothing that can be done by one individual. It's all has to come by a group of people, and everybody contribute. We're not good at that. We're not good at teamwork, because teamwork requires you to be humble, to know your limits, and you know the area, your strength, where you contribute, and the area that is not yours. And you have people who think they know everything and they're good at everything. So it is a problem, severe problem. And by the way, that's what is limiting the incentive to learn. Because if you think you already know everything, there is no incentive for you to learn. And that's very widespread among Muslims, this idea that, I mean, what they mean by knowing, having an idea about it, superficial, but focusing on something and try to excel in it, and forget about, leave other areas for other people. And if you want to gonna do a project, then you know that you're going to contribute only from one angle and leave it. We have people, even in our communities here, we still have sometimes a person who have money, they build mosque, they lead it, they are the president, they are the imam, he's everybody, he's everything for everybody. Yeah, it's a mindset that has to change, which is try to focus and excel in your area, leverage and capitalize on your strength, and work on your weaknesses. But while you work on weakness, leave them alone. I mean, don't get involved in that. That's not your area. So I mean, whatever I agree with the assessment that when we don't know how to do that. We are very I mean, rarely you find a successful team effort. Why? Because that idea is not there. That idea that I know only this part and that's what I can contribute, it's not there. That's why you don't hear this often from Muslims saying that I don't know this, or I have no idea about it. I mean, everybody talks about every subject. People will be sitting together, they talk religion, everybody talks, and then they switch to politics, everybody becomes politician. then switch to science, everybody becomes scientist. So, and nobody is willing to say that's, sorry, I don't know about this. I didn't read anything.
Yeah, and that's true. And some of them would say that, yeah, but if we go back to Sahaba's time, we know that most of the Sahaba would do a lot of charities, or like do hasanat in different ways, different areas. Like when Rasulullah said, who's fasting? Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said, I'm fasting. Who gave donation? Who helped yatim? Who this and that? So they would, some people would try to try their best to do hasanat and get hasanat from wherever and whenever they can. And this is an argument that why not? If I can spare like half an hour or 1 hour in helping like in this area, and then another 1 hour here, another 2 hours there. But then my response, I don't know if I'm right or wrong with that, but my response to that is, and since my background is a human resources and organization structure, I would look at it as an organization. So when we hire people, or want people to contribute to the success of the organization, we hire people with specific skills to hold a position with specific description in order to achieve in one area of the organization success. So we hire a person for the marketing, and he needs or she needs to work in marketing in order to fill the gap of the marketing in that organization. The same for finance, the same for let's say legal. So the legal person, if he or she wants to work in the legal department and accounting and HR and marketing, then he or she will be less useful to the organization, and the contribution will be way less and sometimes distracting for other work. So I'm not sure if this is a good analogy.
I mean, you mentioned two different things. When it comes to doing good deeds, you're right. The diversifying is a good idea, but also diversifying with prioritizing. So good deeds should not be just at convenience, whatever convenient, but also whatever priority. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is something called wajibul waqt. What is expected from you at this moment or in this context. Somebody who's needs help or dying, or and then you cannot say, I'm going to go and pray. No, wajib al-waqt at that time is to help him. So it's diversity, you're right. When it comes to doing good deeds, it's good to diversify and try to, it's like buying stocks or portfolio. Just go and do good deeds, whatever, in as many places as possible with priority. But we are talking about expertise. That's different. That's where we said you need to focus only on the area that you know. But helping, no, of course, that doesn't require any expertise. You can help today in Soup Kitchen, to do more in Habitat for Humanity. Next day, you're doing a workshop, sharing your knowledge or your expertise, whatever. I mean, whatever help you can do. But when it comes to areas of expertise or a task that you mentioned, like you mentioned in human resources, there is a task that requires someone who's expert in that field. Then comes the right person in the right place. The right person in the right place. And that's what I say we're missing. We're missing that idea to be humble, that if I was given a lot of money, that doesn't make me speaker, doesn't make me leader, doesn't make me faqih, that it make me a good person to sponsor. I'm in a position that I can sponsor projects and they can support them. And the same thing goes for others. You have administrative skills, that doesn't make you a leader. You have leadership skills doesn't make you a financial expert. You have financial expertise doesn't make you a good administrator, etc. That's what we're missing. And if you're talking about in the past, whether it is in terms of good deeds or in terms of expertise, life used to be much simpler. That's why we have scientists who is scientists in all fields, and sometimes philosopher at the same time, and sometimes a religious scholar. He's the same person. That's not possible now. Areas become very, very specialized. You cannot have nowadays a physician who can do it all. There is a physician who knows only cardiology or knows this, that's it. They don't touch other things. Cannot treat your eyes, cannot treat your brain. So the life in general became much more complicated. Science became much more complicated. And also possibility of charitable work or good deeds also became so plenty that now we require specialization. We require people to specialize and complement one another. Specialize doesn't mean you abandon something. Specialize, you leave it for somebody else. You leave it for somebody else who is more qualified or better equipped to do a better job there. Yeah, that's, we need to differentiate when it comes to good deeds. Whatever you can do in any field, go for it, as long as you prioritize. But when it comes to areas of expertise, focus only on your strength while working on your weaknesses. By the way, it makes you very comfortable when you acknowledge your weaknesses. It's unlike what people think when you say that's not my cup of tea. And I find it so easy to say it. And it makes you really very, very comfortable. Other than trying, otherwise you're going to be trying and artificially, that's why. This is not my area. I don't know much about it. I'm not good at this. We have to train ourselves to say these things and be very comfortable in saying them. I know in this country, very normal, but unfortunately, Muslim culture, it's not. It's not the, I don't know, or I have no idea about it, or I'm not good at this. That's not something that you hear all the time. Or that was my fault. Also, that's something that you don't hear it.
Well, I think what encourage this kind of culture, or maybe certain people who will do everything and be expert, is the idea of absence of accountability. We tend usually not to ask or to question. We see something and okay, he knows better than me, or I don't know, or something, and you let go. You don't think of your responsibility. Every single person should be responsible and do the amr bil ma'ruf and nahy al munkar. That's what one of the basic basic parts of Islam is to, if you see something wrong, say something. If you see something good, compliment or maybe help. I think that's very basic things we need to have it reinforced in our life. Because if you see management in a mosque or in a country, because I think dictatorship encourage people not to ask. This is from Allah, this is qadar, this is something. And if the leader take us to a disaster, I mean, we cannot ask him. It's not, he did his best. Instead of asking, oh, this is wrong, you should be maybe removed, you should do something. No, we just listen and say, oh, no, it's not my responsibility. He knows better than me. I think that's part of the culture needs to be at least talked about.
You're right. One of the worst things that really need to be fixed sooner rather than later, and fixed from the roots, this idea that we are not responsible for results. That's very common, by the way. You hear it everywhere. We're not responsible for results. Results are in the hands of Allah. That's kalimatu haqq urida biha batil. It's not true. That's why you are not result driven. Because from the beginning, you're saying results are not in my hand. And then comes, as Father Muhammad mentioned, no accountability, because we're not responsible for results. And then when you come to ask, people will tell you, but this person was so sincere and worked so hard. They say, fine, good. Sincerity is between him and Allah. Working hard, thank you very much. But there is a failure. There are no results. There is no delivery. So we still have to understand and hold the person accountable. No, you can't. So it's all linked together. Attributing things to Allah when it is your responsibility. Saying that the results are not in your hand, and that's not true. That's not true. All of this opened the door that there will be no accountability, and because everything you attribute it to Allah, and because everything is qadar, and because the results are in the hands of Allah, so what accountability is left? No accountability. It's a lot of reformation is needed for the Muslim mind, because culture and religious misconceptions are found their ways to the Muslim mind, so that now it's really messed up. I use the example or the metaphor of the circuit. I mean, I teach electricity, and sometimes when students, they do a circuit and it's not working, and there are so many wires there. And then even the TA try to help, and sometimes I say, you know what, it's much better to just take off all the wires and do it again, because otherwise it's going to take you forever to find out where is the mistake is and fix it, because so many wires are in the circuit. I think the same thing happened to the Muslim mind. It's really need to be rewired, because again, a lot of culture in an environment of stagnation and backwardness, a lot of negative cultural element will appear, and then if you add to that religious misconception, then you end up with a mess.
Yeah, somehow I do agree. Like, we have to restart our computer to just get reconnected again. I really think it's really important. It happened to me like at least once a month. Every time I log into my work computer, somehow I have to log in and restart my computer in order for me to see my H drive or C drive to connect to my files. But the other dynamic, and again, this is it's not my expertise, I'm going to say this, but I'm going to just say a couple of things about, like, there is indications that only humans are the last one to indicate that there is an earthquake. And historically, like, there always whenever there is some kind of like an earthquake crisis, they talk about like animals move away or disappear 24 hours. And the other irony is that the donkey is one of the last animals that realizes that there is earthquake 20 minutes before humans even try to spy it, or before the earthquake happens. This is really an interesting part of this whole situation. And one more, just to comment, it's more like a comment about what we're talking about, expertise. It just happened 2 days ago. I read a story from one of my friends in his Facebook. So he had the story between an Arab engineer and a Japanese engineer. And the Arab engineer asking the Japanese, like, why all of you are so smart? And how you got to do that? So the Japanese said, out of every 10 Japanese, there is only one smart man. But with you, it's like you have at least 9 smarts. And then But the difference between us, the Japanese continues to say, the difference between us, we select the smartest to lead our agencies and our organizations. But the problem with you is like you select the least educated person to lead, and the other 9 would be without a job. And I really think that this summarizes all of the discussion now. And I'm sorry for I'm not trying to eliminate anybody's comments, but I really think that this story by itself, it describes how we think about doing things and how things are run back home and how we've been raised and how a lot of the mosques, if we're going to just take the mosques to pick on, a lot of the mosques are running in this country as well. Thank you.
And the proof is the migration of most brilliant and great minds are migrating from Muslim countries. They cannot operate because the environment is very suppressive, not only politically, but also there are a lot of taboos. You cannot be creative, you cannot excel. So a lot of people are migrating, and that's confirmed the fact that in that environment, people who are ambitious, people who are capable, people who are competent, people who are expert, they cannot take it. They cannot take it to be led by someone who is not qualified and who is there because of other reasons. And when I say led, it can be in the country being led by people who are incompetent or mediocre, or it can be the organization in which you are working, and you find yourself led by people who are not qualified and who are not competent. And there are no clear rules for promotion. It's all crooked ways. And that's why people don't stay. So it's a very serious business. I mean, this is not, it's reforming the Muslim mind and changing that culture that that justifies failures and does not encourage or promote accountability and ambition and transparency and etc. It really it became a survivor issue. I mean, unless we progress on this front of awareness and reforming the Muslim mind or rewiring the Muslim mind, and unless we progress on the front of transparency, equal opportunities, fair and honest competition, so that's the environment that will bring the best out of people. I mean, most countries that were able to take off, most of them, they did not, I mean, not most of them, all of them, they did not change their people. It's the same people, but it's a different environment, different awareness because of the reforming the education system. So produce people with different mindset and different way of thinking. And then this environment of transparency and competition and equal opportunity makes people compete. They call it meritocracy. Meritocracy, basically, you get what you work for, and there are no crooked ways. It's not like you bribe or you have someone you're connected. It's just your work. Most countries or all countries who succeeded, they went through this. There is reforming the education system that produced people with different way of thinking, etc. And there is creating a different environment that is characterized with the transparency, accountability, equal opportunity, etc. Other than that, there is no, I mean, those countries are going nowhere. I mean, don't be fooled by anything that is happening, even changing of regimes or revolutions, etc. As long as this revolution did not happen in the mind, nothing is going to happen. Any other thoughts or questions or points of discussion?
Dr. Ghanouch, this is Jalal. Can I raise an issue?
Sure.
Well, you have so often and perhaps very justifiably have mentioned what we are experiencing in the world of our religion, Islam, not being in accord with what it ought to have been. I think there's no question about that. But and earlier speaking about accountability and obviously responsibility in the meantime, that also is very well acknowledged. But to also not mention what would be internal elements and external elements will also not have done a fair assessment of any issue. I think if we call it system, the sets and subsets, the set of Islam, and then there's subsets, and there are other sets outside. And I think over the course of history, perhaps in the history that preceded Islam, interventions and takeovers, attempts, I think as part of the human civilization has occurred. And I think it would be only fair to say that that has existed to date. To what level, to what intensity is another issue also. But I just wanted to point that we probably have failed. Just like if a student goes to school and he makes the efforts and doesn't get where he wants to be, and then you come and analyze, there would be probably environmental conditions, hereditary conditions, domestic conditions, aptitude issues and whatnot that ultimately has led to where he hasn't been. So I wanted to bring that also to the fore. Thank you.
Well, it's a good point. Anybody else? All right, if there are no questions and no points of discussions, we can just adjourn, and then inshallah we meet next week, same time.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.